Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Starkstruck, a podcast where we talk about new technology that get us excited, and specifically blockchains and ZK rollups. Today I'm joined by Rohit Goyal. Hey Rohit, how are you?
Hey, Henri, I'm great. Thanks for inviting me.
Happy to have you. So Rohit, you're I don't know exactly how to qualify this, the lead community of Jediswap, right? With an AMM on Starknet. Is that correct? Is that how you would define it?
Yeah, I guess I like to call it we are the leading community in Web3 who is building on Starknet.
Nice. And what are you doing in that leading community?
So I focus on community building. So what we have realized over the time is all communities work really great. People just need direction. People just need to make sure everyone is aligned on the same principles, on the same ethos. So I just try to keep everyone on the same toes, where we just keep focusing on the Web3 philosophy. And by doing that, I just try to lead products as well. What products we build, which includes an AMM on Starknet, but some other tooling and infra around DeFi and DAOs as well.
Really nice. Thank you. All right. So let's dive right into it. I'd like to explore a little bit. Well, first, who you are and how you got to where you are today. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. So I come from the engineering background. Before that, I come from a very small town in India, the kind of a small town where you still do not have any kind of flights or trains, things like that. Like you can consider this as a tier 3 town in India. I did my schooling outside of my hometown, and then I went to an engineering college in 28, and I did civil engineering. Definitely don't ask me any civil engineering questions. But I think today I consider myself as a builder because once I went to college, that's when I got exposed to most of the things. And that's where my building journey started. And
Wait, so but you studied civil engineering, right?
absolutely, yeah.
It's funny that you say I'm a builder and you studied civil engineering. But why civil engineering? Was it like the obvious path forward for you as an engineer?
So it's kind of interesting how system works in India. So there are this college called IITs, Indian Institute of Technology, which are basically you can consider them as the best institutes for technology. So you have an exam, you pass that exam, and based on your ranking, you get to choose basically what you can get. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like that you want computer science in this college. It instead you have this rank, and based on that you have certain choices. So there are multiple IITs, so you can choose which IIT you want to, and in that particular IIT, which branch are accessible to you based on your rank. So that's
Yeah,
how
I
I
see what
got
you mean.
to civil engineering.
I see. So basically, you pass an exam, which is really like a concourse or a competition, right?
Yes,
And then like the top one gets to choose where he will study and what he will
ex-
study. Okay.
exactly. Instead of top one, it's 0.1 or even less than that in case of IITs. It's
Wow.
very mathematics and physics driven kind of an exam.
Nice. And so eventually, when it gets to your turn, you choose however career is the most prestigious you can get, I guess.
Not really. It's more like what you can get. You don't have any idea about the career at that point of time. So in IITs, it's like everyone fills their choices. Like this is what they want, and then the first rank gets whatever that person wanted. Then the second rank gets, and things start filling up. So in every institute for every single stream, you have limited number of seats. So based on what was your rank and what was your priority, you get to choose the college and the branch.
I see. And so you took civil engineer because that's what was accessible to you. Did you
Exactly.
learn anything interesting there?
I mean, I was lucky because civil engineering was one of the most relaxed branch in IIT Bombay. That's where I went to. What that meant was I really didn't have to focus much on academics, and instead of that, I got to try or explore so many things because I had time.
That's kind of a double-edged sword, though. I mean, like some people like you will have time to explore stuff and actually accomplish meaningful stuff. It's also a nice, I mean, it's also a nice setting where you can just fall asleep and not do much. So,
Absolutely. But I guess like the interesting thing is like when you fill all the smart people because they all are coming from a very highly competitive exam,
yeah,
you are basically filling one place with highly smart people, especially on maths and physics side. They are by default very competitive. So one way or another, they kind of become they kind of get excellence in one thing or another. It's not necessary each one of them will do well academically, but they will find their own thing. And
nice.
I know people like who have done really well even in cultural activities. Like few of my close friends are really great dancers, and they are today like huge influencer in India.
Nice. That's impressive. And what was your own thing at that point?
Yeah, so my thing was building. So I got exposure to programming for the first time in my first year. So we had this one course called, for C++. And this was the first time basically I got exposed to programming. Before that, I never had access to computer. So I
You
never,
never used a computer before college?
I used a computer a couple of times to play games, but I never had access to a computer like where I could do meaningful stuff using a computer.
So you had access to it as an entertainment or an
Y-
entertaining machine a couple of times, but never as a
Yeah.
tool to build stuff.
Yeah, it was like my school in my when I was in sixth standard. We had a computer lab, and there used to be one or two computers there. We used to get like half an hour period in the whole week where it was computer classes, and imagine the batch was like 30 to 50 people in that half an hour class, so nobody got
So it's like
to
a
like
minute per student.
exactly, exactly. So then like I never really got hang of C++ really. Um, but then somehow I got exposed to it that okay, like I can do some cool stuff. So I started playing around with HTML, CSS, and things like that. And eventually, like I realized that I just like loved solving problems. I love building products. So how I can use this newfound skill? I'm not really good at this skill. Like I'm not a great programmer, but how do I use that skill to solve something? So I think that's how my building journey started. And I then started my first company or first venture when I was almost finishing second year of my bachelor's at that point of time. So for that, I built a website, but obviously, like the venture itself is much more than a website or than just technology.
Did you start a website which turned into a business and a venture, or did you start a business and built a website to support it?
I mean, so it was like that. That before I started that, the only way. So what I started was selling fruits and vegetables online.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and how I got exposed to that particular problem was some of my seniors already graduated from college, and then they started living in like apartments, which was close to college. So I used to go to those apartments, and I realized like all of them were bachelors, right? They just went out of college. In college, everything was sorted. And suddenly, like, they needed to solve this problem. Okay, we need to cook food. We need to have food, but for that, we need grocery. And like,
I don't have my parents anymore to cook for me, and
exactly,
so I need to learn how to do this
exactly,
myself and do the
exactly. And
groceries.
exactly. And all of them had jobs, really young people, four guys living in the same apartment. So like their cook is coming and they are saying, like in Hindi, we call it bhaiya, just for like brother, that bhaiya, there is no vegetable. And they are then just like calling people. So we thought like there could be a simple solution. People could probably buy vegetables, order vegetables and fruits online, and internet was just coming into India. Like not many households had internet in 2010 in India. But we started that. keeping this particular segment in mind, that okay, these
Yeah,
people
like
will have
bachelors
internet.
out of university likely would be the first one to get access to the
Exactly,
internet, right?
exactly. So
Which year was that?
now this was 2010.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah. So for this now, we obviously needed to create a website. So that's how basically I started creating the website. And you can imagine like this was probably the second or third website ever I built. And before that, whatever I built, it was much more minuscule. So that's how I started learning more things because I was solving a particular problem.
Hmm. I see what you mean. So you weren't interested in like programming per se, or but mostly like, oh, I want to accomplish that goal in the real life. How do I use these tools to serve my goals? Yeah,
Exactly.
I see what you mean. I'm kind of the same. I need a concrete problem to solve, and then there's no problem learning new stuff as long as it's useful and it serves a purpose.
Exactly.
Nice. So you did that during college, and you ended up. You mentioned you ended up growing it and raising funds and turning it into a real company.
So we raised some funds in this, but it kind of failed because of few reasons. One, I realized after running it for a year that this is more of an operations business than tech business. Like I
Hmm.
used to basically wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, go to some markets, source all everything we had to deliver ourselves in the first few days, and by the time I used to come back, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. And by that time, my classes used to start. So I was going to classes directly from there, then sleeping in the classes. So I realized like, okay, I'm doing this, but this is not my like skill. This is not the thing probably I'm best for. Other people can solve it much better than me, probably.
Yeah.
So that was one problem. I realized I'm not passionate enough for this. Like this is not something I want to do. I'm doing it because I love building, but this is not my vision as such. So I kind of moved on from there, and then I started exploring few different ideas, few different problems. It was never like okay, what I want to build next. It was always like then I started knowing some people who are building companies. When you are around some people like that, you are always discussing problems in general. So uh, at the end of the college, I then started a mobile gaming company, uh, which is something which converted into a real venture, like at least much significantly better compared to the previous one. So that we scaled to roughly like few million users, 3 to 5 million users on mobile.
It's really
And
funny because I come from France, and the scale of what we're discussing is mind blowing to somebody in Europe. Like 3 to 5 million users is significant when you're
yeah,
talking about something you started like this in Europe. In India, scale is different, though, right?
and 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 I guess like so just to give you some more data point, like most of the users were not even from India; it was from US.
Whoa, nice.
Yeah. So basically, like it was a very interesting journey. We never raised a fund for that as well because obviously no VC really believed that it could turn into $1 billion idea, and they were pretty right about it. Uh, but having said that, like I had to basically solve every problem without having the money because of that. That includes getting people to work with you. That includes growing the product. That includes basically everything, like everything you can imagine about building a venture. So, uh, two, I think, interesting thing I ended up learning, or two or three, I'll say. One was like I gathered a set of people who basically worked with me because they really loved the idea. They wanted to work together and they wanted to create something. So it helped me like develop this team building skill inside myself, and also like when I say team building skill, like it's not really about how like okay, can you hire this one person? It's more about can you really find like people who are aligned for the same thing, mission aligned people who think beyond just money, because like you are not paying any salary to them. So can you
Hmm.
find some people like that, and can you find complementary skill sets, because you need to cover like different set of parts to publish a game.
Okay, so it's more like instead of onboarding somebody to a company, it's more like onboarding them towards a mission, a journey to
Exactly,
serve a higher purpose, something that they really
exactly.
believe in and want to invest their time in.
Exactly. So, like, I gathered 10 to 12 people like that. So I was not paying any salary. So I think, like, again, these are the parts now I apply in Jediswap, because Jediswap is basically functioning in the same way, but instead of 10 to 12 people, like, there are now 300 plus contributors. Like, it just at much larger scale, because of the tools now we have been able to come up, because of crypto. I'll
I've
cover that part as well a little bit later.
Sure.
And the second thing was, like, so our first game was, by the way, completely flopped. We spent 1 year to, like, 1.5 year building that game. We had probably 100,000 installs or something like that for that game, and we earned less than $100 from that game. So it was
Doesn't
like,
sound like much. Yeah.
yeah, it was like all the efforts from these 10, 12 people who are basically just like working with you without any salary, giving time and not having anything as the end result. uh, so what I realized is, like, 1 year and 1.5 year is too long a development cycle. I need to come up with something which can give me, like, feedback much quicker, like, so that I don't end up spending so much time without having seen the impact. So
Yeah,
that
it's something that it's kind of hard to do for every product, but getting early feedback on what you're building is extremely important because we, in France specifically, I've seen that in a few sectors, and one particular sector is the weapon industry. Not exactly weapon, but the defense industry, basically, where you get these French companies who get a big budget from the state, and so they know they're going to get some money, and they have to build something for militaries. And then the engineers go into their room and they build something really nice. And a few years later, they've spent a few billion euros on a project, and it gets in the end of the soldier on the ground. And in that particular case, but there are many like this. It's like it's a tablet that you put in the vehicle so that it drives you, and there's GPS and everything. It's really well done, really well connected. But it turns out that this tablet, you can't use it with gloves, and
Oh,
soldiers
wow.
have gloves in the truck, and so they end up not using it just for that stupid reason of not talking to users and not getting early feedback. So I saw that in various other endeavors, and it feels like something that is commonplace to say. You need early
Yeah,
feedback, but I agree
yeah.
with you. It's a crucial
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, exactly. And, like, for me, it was like, imagine, like, I was doing this in 2012. Today, it's very common knowledge that you should iterate fast. You should talk to users first. But it was not common knowledge in 2012, especially in India. Like, I didn't have many people who were building startups. In fact, I was the only one building a startup in the whole college when I started the first company. It was like, till then, I mean, there was some entrepreneurial spirit in Silicon Valley, but it was still not there in India much. There was, like, very few success stories or successful startups you could count on hands. Basically, it was at that scale. So I kind of learned it the hard way, you can say. I hope, like, I read a book which gave me all this knowledge, but that was a learning. But after that, what I realized is, okay, like, what is taking the most time is, like, the development. A game needs design, so much coding, storytelling, the whole concept, and all of that is, again, not my skill set. I'm not an artist, so I should focus on something which are my skill set, which is like puzzles, maths. So can I build something using those skill sets? And then, like, there was this trend. I'm not sure if you have heard of this or not. There was this one very small stupid game which got very popular called Flappy Bird.
Yeah, of
uh,
course.
have you heard of it? So I read the headlines, like, there's this, like, 1 MB game which is making $50,000 a day, and basically taking internet by the storm. I was like, what the hell is this? So I started playing it, and then I just started seeing the trend, like, what was that which was really exciting people about it. So I realized, okay, it's very simple. One, it kind of hitting that part of a human where you want to do better. It looks possible that I can do better, but at the same
Mm.
time, it is hard. That was the one part. Second is that once you achieve that, you want to brag about it. So bragging you only do when you feel it from your own inside, like from the heart of it. So that was the second part. and that game was pretty simple in mechanics. Like anyone can build that game in one day, right? So I decided, okay, like this is what I want to do, something like this, and I came up with the concept. I published that one, and then I applied another learning, which today, like, whole Jediswap follows the same thing, which is memes. So today we use memes everywhere, but I was basically acquiring users using memes on Facebook posts in 2013, 2014. What I used to do was I was just reading these human psychology effect, which I just shared. Like, okay, what is the score where most of the people are really dying? So like, where is that 90 percentile? So okay, that
Mm.
score is, let's say, 20. So I whatever I'll post, that will have that number 20, because like most people will be able to connect to that. Then what is the feeling I get when I get to that 20, either win or lose? So I need to cover both the people, one for aspiration and one for disappointment. So I used to use memes for that, like, okay, trying to cross, let's say, score 20 in Jumpy Tile, which was the name of the game. And there is this guy which is just sitting playing, and then he's converting into like a bones. He died and converted into bones and dust, basically. So, and then when we made that post, I used to boost it by paying to Facebook. So virality used to be very insane. Like sometimes, like some of the post was shared by 10,000 people. So it was
Wow.
great. And I realized like I can design a whole model around it. So I used to advertise this in US, sitting in India. I had one card which I applied to Facebook. So it was like, it was spending money, it was acquiring users, and within a month I was basically getting the same money back. So like if I spend $1 on a user, I was able to get that back within 30 days. Once you have that kind of a mathematics, then you can just scale it out, basically. So
Yeah.
that's how I was able to scale it. So all those things now today we apply at Jediswap a lot, like how memes can be so powerful when you make them about humans.
Wow, really nice, really interesting. Um, okay, cool. It's really interesting that when you talk about Jedi Swap, it's both a community project, but you're looking for virality and getting more people onboarded. You defined earlier Jedi Swap as a community on the biggest, the most active community on Starknet. Can you tell us a bit more how it started?
Yeah, so little bit continuation from like what I did after gaming, so that
Sure.
it can connect properly. So after gaming, like I landed up on Bitcoin white paper end of 2016. I heard about Bitcoin back in 2010 and 2012, and both the time I heard about Bitcoin because it appreciated in price by 5x or 10x, and that never like made me curious to know about it, to learn about it. But this time somebody told me like there is this great tech, you should read about it. I read about it, and luckily at the same time I was reading this book, Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari. I'm sure you might have read it as well.
Yeah, sure.
uh, so it kind of made perfect sense for me. Like Yuval Noah Harari was talking about trust,
Yeah, I
which
agree. The way he describes money, I think one of the biggest thing to get Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is to actually start thinking about what is money,
yeah,
which is at least in Europe, a very like something most people never talk about. When you go to other places, and I don't know if it's the case in India, but you know, in a lot of places in, for example, South America, people are way more aware of what is money than in Europe or in the United States. But what I really liked about that part of Sapiens is that it does outline that money is a collective construction, and a lot of it echoes with what you can see in Bitcoin and in cryptocurrencies at large. Yes.
exactly. So what I took from both the part was, so from Sapiens, I took that like humans' real special power is coordination. At the bottom of it goes down to that. Like the Neanderthals had more IQ than more bigger brain than us, but they were not powerful because we could coordinate, and we could coordinate because we could believe in things which are imaginary, which are just in our mind. So that was one powerful concept I really took from there. And then how Bitcoin actually used that concept. I'm sure like that person, like Satoshi, whoever that was, he understood that concept in some ways.
I
And
agree. There's a lot of really interesting mythology and, you know, cultural things, and there's a whole mythology about Bitcoin, like the anonymous
Exactly.
creator, the Genesis block, and there's so much of these everywhere. It's really
Exactly.
impressive.
Exactly. So I realized, like, holy shit, this is basically going to be the next big thing. This is not really about Bitcoin. This is not really just about money. This is like an idea which will explode, which will. So we continuously iterated our different models. We used to coordinate in hundreds of, in collective group, like in clans. Then we came up with cities, villages, nations, corporations, and all of that. This will take us to the next stage of that evolution, where we could probably coordinate in millions at some day. So that is what it is about. Now in that process, we will create many tools like this which will use the same idea, just in different flavors. And I'll say, like, Ethereum is just like expansion of the same idea in a different flavor, and DAOs basically represents the same idea in a much bigger flavor of the same thing. So from there, I first decided, okay, this is where I want to spend my time on. I quickly became passionate about it. So now you see, like, these were the gaps which was filled very quickly compared to like what I had in the first business, which I said, like, there was no vision, like, from a higher perspective. So here I thought, like, this is something I want to do personally. Like, it doesn't matter what is the outcome. I think this will push humanity in general towards a greater future. And that's why I want to do it. So with that, I started building a crypto company by end of 2017 called Mudrex. So what we
Mhm.
realized is, okay, if we want to bring more people into this space, make them understand more about this space, probably getting them invested into this space might be the best thing to do. So as a result, we started Mudrex as a easiest investing experience for anyone coming to crypto for the first time.
It's
Uh,
onboarding for newcomers to crypto, make it easy for
yes,
you to get exposure to crypto.
exactly. So once you invest into crypto, then you become curious, then you start learning about it. That's the philosophy. I'm not saying that that is the only way to do it, but that's how we started it. And so, like, because of that, then we got accepted into Y Combinator. So I applied for YC in 2019 and got into YC. And that was like another change, because like suddenly my exposure got much wider. Because again, in India, if you think from India, there were not more than four or five teams who were building into crypto in 2019, and Polygon was one of the team. Like, they were probably as big as us, or a little bit bigger than us at that point of time. Similarly, there were more couple of teams. So, like, when we got into YC, I again got a lot of exposure into what are the things happening. Met a lot of projects like 0x guys and things like that.
So what does getting into YC mean? I'm not super familiar with the program.
Okay, so YC is, so first of all,
It's a
like,
Y Combinator, right?
yeah, Y Combinator. So it's an accelerator program. It's the most prestigious accelerator program in the world. Uh, so it started by Paul Graham, and in the first set of batch they had like 15-20 founders, and those founders created companies like Reddit uh,
Mhm.
within the first batch. And over the time they have produced companies like Airbnb, Coinbase, OpenSea, all these companies. So what do they have is, like, startups apply to Y Combinator program. So many startups apply, then they basically review the process. There is an application process and an interview process. The selected startups then get invited to Silicon Valley to stay there for 3 months, work with the partners at Y Combinator, and basically get ready for a demo day. So in this 3 month,
Mhm.
you are basically, the whole idea is like you are going to get exposed to the highest amount of capital you can ever imagine. Basically, every
Wow.
investor will come on demo day, whoever you can imagine. It includes Khosla, it includes like any single investor in the world. So in that 3 months, you have to suddenly start thinking from the big picture perspective. Otherwise, you are always in that product phase. You are always thinking smaller. You are not thinking from the higher level perspective.
Okay, so
So
it's 3 months for you to get your head up, not looking
yes,
at your drawing board all the time and think, okay, where am I going with this and how big can
yes,
this be?
yes. So it's a balance of both. one thing YC always focuses on is like talk to your users. Like that's their
Mhm.
mantra basically. So you by default learn that habit that okay, you need to show progress every 2 weeks. So suddenly your iteration cycle become much smaller. You start thinking in smaller time horizon from execution perspective. At the same time, when you are pitching, you are always thinking from a higher horizon perspective. So it's a balance of both. So it's a storytelling, but at the same time, fast execution. So after YC, like it was the worst market in crypto. Like we never really raised funds, and anyone who goes to YC, like generally most of the companies end up raising 1 million or 2 million in the seed round. We raised $140,000 in that YC batch. We were only one of the two company which was part of that batch. Today, if you will look at the YC batch, there will be like at least 10% of the company will be crypto companies
Oh,
in a
interesting.
500 batch. At least 10 to 20 will be crypto companies easily. So then we built this company for about 3 years. And suddenly then DeFi summer happened again in 2020. And I realized that whatever I have been doing by building Mudrex till now, I actually lost on the learning I was going through when I actually was just getting into crypto. When I was getting into crypto, I was reading white papers. I was thinking everything around permissionless, decentralized, and all of that. But Mudrex at the end of the day is a company. It's a traditional company. It's a custodial company. So it's not like pushing uh, on the frontier. It's definitely playing in the adoption side, but it is not pushing the frontier. And I realized like I want to do that. Basically, I want to bring people to the real crypto where it's non-custodial, where it's permissionless. So from there, then I started spending more time around different communities. And what I realized is like ultimately it all comes down to people. Whatever we are building in crypto, it's to empower humans. It's to build a better coordination system. So that coordination system comes from a set of people who believe in those things. It cannot come if you are coming from this high mission of like you just want to make money. Then you cannot create the real crypto, the permissionless world. It
It
has to come
doesn't
from
it doesn't come from the tech, it comes from the people. At the end of the
exactly,
day, it serves humans, and humans need to trust it, use it, believe in it, and want to push it forward.
exactly, exactly. So I realized like at the end of the day, it's all about community. If I am ever going to build anything in DeFi or in crypto, it will sustain on a community. That will be the biggest moat, whatever I end up building. So I don't know what problems are there. I don't know what to build as a product, but I know it will need a community. I know it will start with a community. So we decided, okay, like let's start building a community first. So I started like I wrote a blog post, like published a Twitter thread. Some great people helped me like reviewing that great post as well. Like Ryan from Bankless, for an example. They were
Nice.
also not really big at that point of time. So luckily he was able to spend some time. He really liked that blog. So got some confidence, okay, like we can publish it. And in that blog post, like the final action item was that basically we are trying to create a community of people who believe that Web3 is good for the world and want to push it to the next level. Like, let's just come together and let's build it together. So we created a Telegram group. In the early days, it was just 10, 15 people in the whole Telegram group. And we just started creating a community, doing weekly calls or monthly calls, coming together. Some really good people used to come in those calls. Some people actually started their crypto journey because of that. Like I know a friend who was just getting into crypto. He used to join our calls, and today he works at Multicoin Capital, for an example. Like he used to join our
Nice.
calls. Similarly, like if you have seen Nurstar today, like he writes a lot about
Yeah, yeah, of
Starknet
course.
ecosystem. So his whole crypto journey started with Jediswap. He joined our Discord. He was the early contributor. Then he figured out, okay, like I really like writing, so I want to write about the whole Starknet ecosystem. That's how
This
his
is
journey
great.
started. So
It's
many
really
people,
it's really an interesting perspective on how to build a nice product, because in the end there are some products that come out of it, but like don't start with an ID, don't start with the text, start with let's put interested curious people in a box and shake and see what comes out of it.
exactly, exactly. So I think like in the early days, then it was just like about the community. Like, let's just keep bringing these highly aligned people as a group and keep figuring out what we can build. And then in the product iteration cycle, we build a yield protocol on Ethereum in 2020, and very quickly realized that it is not going to work. Yarn is doing much better job than we will ever be able to do. Like, there is no point of recreating the same cycle, the same wheel. They have already invented the wheel. Then we started building something on Polygon as well. But we realized, like, as a mission, like, our mission was always bringing real Web3 to people, which was about it should be permissionless, it should be secure. And at the same time, it should be cheap. Otherwise, like, billions of people cannot use it. It should be easy to use. Otherwise, like, people cannot use it.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It's something that often people in the West forget about. That transaction fees are because the network is safe, and safe is better. But my colleague David, who's from Venezuela, told me that at some point the most used cryptocurrency in Venezuela was not Bitcoin, it was not Ether, it was Dash, because it was cheap. And that at
exactly.
the end of the day, being able to do cheap transactions fast is extremely important for people. So, of course, over the long term, security is extremely important, but we sometimes tend to overestimate how important cost is.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, because of the cost reason, we started building on Polygon. And when I say Polygon, I am only referring to the proof of stake sidechain they have. And we realized, like, it really didn't carry to the ethos on the security and decentralized part for us. And we don't want to do that for long term. So what's next? And that's when, like, we started exploring rollup, and we started exploring optimistic rollups. And with optimistic rollup, we realized that, okay, it's pretty good. Actually, we can build on that. And we actually started building something on Arbitrum as well. And I think it was around very early 2021, Vitalik published the end game blog post. I read that, and that was the first time I got introduced to ZK rollups. And again, it was another set of euphoria moment, just like when I read the Bitcoin white paper, that, okay, this is exactly what will help us reach to billions of people in exactly the manner we want, which will be cheap, which will be more secure, and which will be easy. So this is what we are for. And I think that blog talked mostly around, like, timelines. The only concern was around timeline, that
Yeah.
he said, at least, like, that ZK rollups are 5 years away, and optimistic rollups will be the midterm solution. So I basically thought, like, is as a community, like, do we want to build something for 4 years, 5 years, or do we want to build something for 20 years, 10 years? If the question is, like, we want to build something for 10 years, 20 years, why do we have to wait for ZK rollups to happen? Why can't we push it as well? Maybe, like, we can reduce that 5 year to 4 year, and that will be a significant impact from our community to Web3 ecosystem. So that's how we took a bet, like, okay, scratch everything. We don't care at what stage ZK rollups are, but we want to start building on that today. And luckily, I got connected to Uri in around March 2021. Again,
How come?
Starkware was.
How did it happen?
So it happened. So Ryan Sean Adams wrote something on his Twitter. He didn't mention the project name. He mentioned, like, there is this new great team who is working on this. They are looking to talk to some liquidity providers to have feedback. And through that, there was this one guy called Jonathan Cares. He reached out to Ryan, and then we got connected. And he ended up investing in mesh finance as well. We used to call it mesh finance. And he then was working at Starkware. So he said, like, why don't you talk to Starkware? And that was the first time I talked to Uri. Uri was on the call. Jonathan was on the call. A couple of more people was on the call. I think Liron was there. I'm not 100% sure. So at that point of time, Starknet was not live, but StarkX was live. So during the first conversation, like, I didn't really get it, to be honest, because, again, like, if you have seen, my background is not hardcore math or tech, but it's a builder, right? So I think from that.
If I'm honest, I'm not sure I get it even now either. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so complex and there's so many ramifications. And even the blockchain field, right? I don't think there's blockchain experts, only
Yeah.
explorers. It's even
Yeah.
more so for the case for ZK rollups and ZK in
Exactly.
general.
Exactly. So the part I missed there was that I want to build something which is composable, and Stark X was not composable.
Yeah.
I'll say like I underestimated Stark X. I think it's even much more powerful today than probably Starknet. I'll say in some ways, and I can like obviously put some arguments in perspective if you want. Uh, but we continuously kept reading about Starkware from then, and then like in the next 3 months, around June, Starkware announced that okay, this is the public alpha of Starknet. So that was the moment I got back to the same email thread. By that time, Jonathan already left, but Leon replied back to my email, "Hey, like Jonathan has left, but like let's get on a call." We spoke, and I told him like, "See, uh, we have this product as a centralized product. So what we were building at Mudrex, so it was like an
Hmm.
index product for crypto, how to invest in crypto indices. I think that this will be like a best product, perfect product for Starknet because uh, the people who invest in indices, they invest with very small amount. They invest using SIPs, like systematic investment, month or month, week or week.
Hmm.
So they cannot pay high gas fees. They don't move around much, so they don't need like this probably this cheap as Polygon. So it will still work, but they definitely need more security. So I think this is a
Yeah.
perfect product for here. Leron said like, I definitely love this and would love to help. And we were like, amazing. We got some support. Then Leron said, do you want a grant? We were like, it's okay. Like, we don't want a grant. It's fine. Like, we can work. That there is nothing like we don't need really money, but we need good people. So if you ever talk about Starknet project, just talk about us. If we get good people, that's enough for us. And Leron said like that's the best team to give grant for. So basically, like in 5 minutes, they gave us $50,000 grant. So that obviously like that was a good you can say morale booster. Like we felt that energy that what we are for. The Starkware team is also kind of on the same page philosophically.
Yeah,
So
it's confirmation that what you're building, which is a community of enthusiastic people, has value to other people and is meaningful and is something other projects, specifically Starkware in that case, were looking for.
exactly. So from there, then we asked everyone in our dev community. So we had like 4 5 devs in our community. By the way, none of them are paid. Like they just were contributing to Mesh Finance at that point of time. We were writing Solidity mostly. So we just told everyone like, hey guys, now we are building this. If you guys love it, like let's start learning Cairo together. And Cairo is pretty new. It's going to be challenging, so it will be just better if we all learn together. So that's how we started. And I guess like we then had the biggest Cairo dev community because obviously like we were not known. We were always building in shadows. Probably there were 50, 40 devs, Cairo devs around maybe like July, August, September in that time period. And
Hmm.
we had 10 of those. So that was a pretty big number.
Yeah, it is.
So when we started building it, then we realized, okay, we need an AMM for this to make this successful. So I went back to Liron, like, is there any team who is building an AMM? And Liron connected me to the Zigzag team. So
Hmm.
we spoke with Zigzag team and realized we cannot really work with the model they have with the order book model. It was breaking the composability. And that's when we realized like AMMs are actually AMMs play much bigger role than we give them credit for. They play a bigger role on the composability side, maybe not on the capital efficiency side. So we decide, okay, like let's build an AMM. It's one of the fundamental building block. So if nobody is building it, why don't we start building it? So that's how Jediswap started. Then we thought like we should give this a new name. And we were like, okay, we need a name using which we can communicate. We need a communication language with people. ZK rollups are going to be very, very hard to explain to people. But if we can use memes around here somewhere in our
we all
communication,
it
it
always
can go
comes
a
back
long
to
way.
me.
Exactly. So you thought, okay, like, like one of my good friends suggested like Jediswap, and it just quickly connected to me. I just went back to my laptop, checked if the domain was available, just bought the domain right at that moment, and we were like, this fits perfectly because the most beautiful thing about Star Wars is it basically tells about what is Web3. It's always about light side and dark side, where you are always talking about democracy on the light side, and you are always talking about power concentration on the dark side. So we realized like pretty much like 50% of the devs would have watched it already, or the people who will be in crypto, like many of them would have watched it. It will be very easy to communicate that, and bring in more people using that communication language. So yeah, long story, but that was the whole inception of Jediswap. I can't hear you.
Yep, sorry, I was muted. So really interesting. Um, so this is where you are. So right now, Jediswap is a community. You built an AMM. What's next?
So I think like as a community, we are always looking for a higher purpose. So our whole mission is to push Web3, and that doesn't happen just with an AMM. So there are a couple of things we are focusing on. First, on the AMM side as well, like we are right now in the research mode, like how we can come up with something that is better than anything else which exists today on the decentralized exchange side. How we can really use ZK rollups or validity rollups to like create something which is not possible somewhere else on Ethereum or on other chains. So that is where like large amount of focus is going on. We will come up with like Jediswap V2 in the next 3 to 4 months, which will be a significantly improved version. I'm not sure what part of research that will include. It depends on like whenever you get breakthroughs in research, you get breakthroughs. So there will be continuous iteration, continuous will to push a better decentralized exchange design. At the same time, like what we have done over these last 2 years while building these communities, we have created a framework in which anyone can come join a community and start contributing to a community, and at the same time we can count how much impact or how much effort someone has contributed to this community. So if you think about it, like we are basically fundamentally changing how humans can start their career or can work. uh, like if you think from someone who is in college, so I was lucky, I went to a prestigious college, and because of that all the opportunities was pretty visible for me, I got all the exposure. But if you suddenly go down back to, like for an example, my hometown, like humans are same everywhere, right? Like most of the humans will have brilliant mind, they will have this zeal. If they get exposed to things, like they will have the same trajectory like you or like any of us like have. So how do we create a structure in that anyone from any place speaking any language can come get exposed to the biggest problem for humanity, can contribute towards that problem statement, and at the same time make a living because of contributing to that problem statement. So we are creating frameworks for that, and then tooling to implement those frameworks. That's going to be like our second largest focus, so going forward.
Really nice. I I like DAOs, but I think that sometimes people overestimate how much coordination problems between humans are due to technical matters where or to human matters. It's not because we can do stuff with a smart contract that all of a sudden we need to throw out everything that was done with the law for the past 500 years. And it's not because we have suddenly better communication mechanism that will solve coordination problem around governance. But what I like about what you're describing is that you're not designing a governance mechanism or governance tools in an isolated environment where you're like you have these nice concepts and everything. You are actually experimenting with this and running the community and having the community grow and seeing what works and what doesn't. So I
Exactly.
think this is the best way to experiment with growing governance. So congrats on that.
And by the way, like we do not have a single DAO contract today. Like there is no voting contract. There is no smart contract on the DAO side today. We think all of that we will figure out once we have the processes, once we have the clarity about what works. Then we can create the tools. That it's always better to go other way around.
Yeah, definitely. It's easy to come up with the code. It's not easy to come up with the process.
Exactly.
Really nice. Rohit, thank you a lot for your time today. I think we can wrap it up. One last question. So you talked a lot about memes. What's your favorite meme?
Oh, so I recently saw this meme, which was basically I could relate to it. It was about Web3. Anyone who is in Web3 only, those people will get it. So the first, like, have you seen these memes where you have this big brain, small brain, giga
Yeah,
brain, and then
exactly.
chat? Like
At the
it
end,
was like
yep.
that. The first one was like invested in crypto. The second one was something like, okay, understand crypto, can code in Solidity, and the
Yeah.
last one was understand community. So that was like my recent favorite memes. But again, like it's not like that's the only meme. I love a lot of memes, but that was one of my favorite because it was it was in one single picture communicating what we are trying to do essentially as a whole community.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a fascination. It's a fascinating social evolution adventure that
Exactly,
we're experimenting, and it's all playing out live in real
exactly,
time over the internet. That's
exactly.
crazy. We don't know
Yeah.
where it will go. It may work, it may fail, but it's going to be a really interesting
So
ride.
I am an optimist. I think like whenever some decent number of high aligned people will come for any problem statement, we will make progress.
Yeah, I share that conviction. Rohit, thank you for your time, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me. It was great having you.
Bye.